Welcome to the Ultimate Vanilla Arms Warrior PvP Guide. In this guide, I'll be covering everything you need to know to be successful on Warrior. I'll be covering battlegrounds, world PvP, duels versus each class, talents, gear, macros, all of my PvP and engineering items, plus my long-kept warrior secrets, as well as how to use slam correctly, how to kill flag carriers, how to beat mages and rogues, and how to use the environment to your advantage, plus a ton of other tips and tricks. If you guys need to skip to any portion of this video, there will be timestamps in the description as well as a pinned comment. Also, if you guys are much more of a visual learner, I have a ton of live commentaries on my channel where I'm playing Classic Warrior and I'm commentating play by play and what I'm thinking and doing in World PvP, Battlegrounds, and I also have a duel series versus each class. One of the first things I'm going to cover in this detailed guide are races. I believe that there is only one choice on Alliance and one choice on Horde if you are a serious PvPer for races for Warrior. Obviously on Alliance it would be Gnome. Escape Artist is just far too good to pass up. It's better than anything that any of the other races have to offer. It is a free root removal, which is the #1 CC that you sit as a Warrior in Classic. Being able to Escape Artist that first Frost Nova from a mage is literally going to win the duel against them or not. On the Horde side, the only acceptable race is going to be Orc. That stun resist is just far too good to pass up. War Stomp is not very good because it DRs your stun if you're looking for an intercept and killing an intercept. War Stomp is just going to make that half DR, and Troll isn't even worth wasting your time on. Moving on to gear. Gear is a huge part of WoW Classic, especially for Warrior. It will literally determine whether or not you're going to win certain fights. It's just a gear check. But the best way I can describe how to gear out your Warrior is one of two ways. You're either going to build a defensive Warrior that stacks HP as well as critical strike and just mainly stats like HP and strength. Or you're going to stack a purely offensive warrior that's stacking maximum attack power, maximum strength, and maximum crit. So I personally, even when playing with a Holy Pally or a Pocket Healer or something, still stack a defensive warrior. As you can see, I have 5.8k HP right now, unbuffed. It could be 6,000 HP if I had the Leg and the Helm enchant. I'm still working on that. But that is a lot of health for a warrior, and that comes from simply me building my warrior and stacking the maximum amount of stamina as I possibly can. Stamina on all of my enchants, stamina on all of my off pieces. I gear my character this way because all of the years of warrior experience that I have, this is what I've come to learn. If you can survive, outlive your opponent's cooldowns, you will beat them in a fight every single time. If you can survive against double blind against a rogue, you'll beat him. If you can survive against double ice block against a mage, you'll beat him. You just have to outlive your opponent by stacking the most amount of health possible. In terms of what gear to use and when to gear, like for different phases, it's going to depend on one of two things. It's always going to depend on your rank, how much honor you have / what PvP gear you have access to, and it's also going to depend on what you can raid. For the most part, the tier gear, especially starting out, if we're talking phase 1, we don't have PvP ranks yet, tier 1 gear is actually very good on Warrior. I've put together some gear sets here and I want to demonstrate the difference between my HP builds and kind of just my raw damage. So here we've got what I would consider a pretty high HP build. We've got 5 out of 8 tier 1, so a lot of my gear. I put that in here because it's pretty easy to get as Warrior, I feel like. We're also running Axe specialization with that Arcanite Reaper, and we've got the minimum stats that we need, 5% hit. This set contains both dungeon gear and raid gear, and that's kind of the same going forward. I included gear that I thought was pretty easily obtainable. Obviously you could get better rings, but with this set you can see we have 5,000 HP with only 9% chance to crit, but with that Axe specialization that's an extra 5%, and so we're now at 14%, but we've got significantly more health than a build like this, where I'm running a lot of crit. I've got 16% crit just from gear. I've also running Bree and just a lot more attack power. But this is a glass cannon build, only 4,300 HP and gear that's harder to get in my opinion. Here's another set I included from BWL phase. Now none of these sets are BIS lists. They're just simply a gear that you can look forward to obtain, or just a combination of gear that you might have available, like PvE gear as well as some rank gear. I included Drake Talon Cleaver here because it's a very easy two-hander to obtain, and it's phenomenal until you get something better, like a slower weapon. I'm going to be covering all of the minimum stat requirements and weapon stuff later on. Skipping all the way to Nax, here is my personal BIS list. This would be the gear that I would run if I had access to every single item in the game. I think Dark Edge of Insanity is the best weapon in the entire game. That proc, that 3-second disorient that doesn't DR with anything and that doesn't break on damage, is one of the most OP things to add to Warrior's toolkit, in addition to the consistency from axe specialization, and then just the raw damage, but also most importantly having almost 6,000 health. I don't have any enchants on this gear, so probably with enchants I'd have somewhere around 6,200 health unbuffed, and that is just insane, because in addition to Zerxtance plus axe spec, I'm going to have somewhere around maybe 30%, 29% crit as well. Moving on, here is just a raw damage BIS set. If I just wanted to do the most damage possible, here's the gear that I would run. Yes, it has Might of Menethil. Might of Menethil is the strongest weapon in the entire game. It's a 3.8 with the most amount of top end and just insane stats, but it is a mace, and maces DR my kill opportunities, and that's generally how I'll win duels, is I'll win because I'll kill them in an intercept when they're not expecting it. I wanted to give some insight to weapon speed and what exactly all of that means, because it's not necessarily obvious to a new player. As you can see here on Dark Edge of Insanity, it says axe 3.5 seconds. What that means is every 3.5 seconds I will use my auto attack. Now weapon speeds vary from 3 seconds to 4 seconds, but the very best weapons in the game are 3.8, and I'll explain why. Your ability Mortal Strike scales off of your weapon damage. So what that means is, as you can see here, where it says underneath unique, underneath two-hander, it says 242 to 364 damage. That means that when you auto attack, you will strike anywhere in that range. It's a random ability, just like a spell is random, with 364 being the top end of the weapon. So this is a 3.5 axe, and the top end is 364. So if I compare it to something like Zinrock, or if I compare it to something like Might of Menethil, it's a 3.8, so its auto attack is a lot slower, but its top end is a lot higher. Basically what that means is you're swinging less often, but you're hitting for harder each time you swing. And why that's good on a warrior, and why you want the slowest weapon like a 3.8, is because not only does your Mortal Strike scale off of it, but the simple terms is you're not going to have 100% uptime on the target. You know, if I'm chasing a target here, I'm going to get slowed, I'm going to get rooted, I'm going to have my auto attack interrupted in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a stun on me from a rogue, whether that's a Frost Nova, or a scatter shot from a hunter. So, with that being said, you want the weapon that when you're going to swing once, it's going to hit the hardest possible. So you're not going to have 100% uptime on the target. You're going to swing. You're not going to be swinging every 3.5 seconds. You're probably going to be swinging every 5 seconds. So you want that weapon that swings less often to hit harder. It is critical that you keep weapon speed in mind when selecting a two-hander. Not only are you going to look at the two-hander type, whether it's an axe, polearm, mace, or sword, but you're also going to look at its speed. You want to pick the slowest possible weapon, which would be a 4-second or a high 3.8, 3.7, and then you'd want to then judge it on what type of weapon it is, whether that's a sword or an axe, with axe being the best, sword being the second best, mace being the third best. Polearm and axe are the same thing, but there's not that many polearms in the game. And then you're going to want to look at its top end damage and its stats. And just to clarify one more time, the importance of weapon speed. Also, when you have a slower weapon, like for instance Corrupted Ashbringer here is a 3.6 sword, the slower the weapon, the more often you're going to proc sword spec, or you're going to proc something like Hand of Justice, because you're swinging less often, so you have a higher chance to use those on hit items or proc items like Badge of the Swarm Guard or whatever it is. Now I'll cover what each stat does and the minimum stat requirements for PvP. Hopping right into it, strength is super simple. 1 strength equals 2 attack power, as well as increases the amount of damage that can be blocked with the shield. Agility, 20 agility equals 1 critical strike, as well as an increased chance to dodge. Stamina, 1 stamina equals 10 hit points, so just add a 0 onto whatever item. You know, if you have 10 stamina, just add a 0, you have 100 hit points. Intellect, the only thing that's good for intellect is increasing the rate at which you level your weapon skill. This is a PvP guide, so pointless. Spirit, pretty pointless because we don't need to necessarily regen health in combat. And then armor, actually pretty important. I hope you guys are running all plate gear in your warrior builds because armor is extremely important. When I put on a one-hander and a shield, I've got almost 8,500 armor, which reduces the amount of incoming damage by hunters, rogues, and other warriors and feral druids by 60%. So that is a lot of damage reduction just from my gear alone. The minimum amount of hit that you want to have for PvP is 5%. So I have 1 from the neck, 2 from the shoulders, 3 from the bow, 4 from the ring, 5 from the boots, and then 6 from the legs. Now, with this being said, please do not be afraid to swap out your gear for engineering items, whether that's a pair of rocket boots, rocket helm, whether you want to run double engineering trinkets, whatever it is. I purposefully gear my characters out to where I am still able to swap to rocket boots and rocket helm and still maintain 5% hit because I'm running it on off pieces. And that also goes for Spider Belt too, because Spider Belt is just phenomenal. I'll also talk about weapon skill and minimum crit strike. You do not need more than 300 weapon skill in PvP. If you have 5% rating and 300 weapon skill, you will never miss a yellow damage ability if the target has 300 defense. If for whatever reason you're running against a flag carrier that has increased defense, or a warrior with a few pieces of Conqueror's gear like myself, you may very rarely miss a yellow ability due to you not having a high enough weapon skill. 6% hit will not solve that ability to miss. You'll simply need a higher weapon skill. But with that being said, weapon skill is completely pointless in PvP. Don't even consider it when considering a weapon or a race. In terms of critical strike, in Berserker stance, you should have a minimum of at least 25% chance to crit in PvP. Even in blue gear, you can roughly achieve 22% in Berserker stance with axe specialization. Next, I'll cover my talents. I run a very standard arms warrior build, but there's a few points that you can put here and there to differentiate yourself from other warriors. Starting at the top here, we got points all the way down into Impale, and then I've got points in anger management, improved overpower, as well as 1 point in improved charge. Now the reason why I run 1 point in improved charge is because it'll just give you that extra 3 rage and allow you to potentially get a sweeping strikes up with a melee critical strike. So you can charge in, melee crit, and get a sweeping strikes up without having to use blood rage. Otherwise it would be a charge blood rage, and then you could sweeping strike. So I like 1 point in improved charge. We've got 2 points in two-handed weapon specialization. Now this is the one talent where you can take points out of other talents and put into this. So for example, if you didn't want improved hamstring, which causes a root, you could put those 3 points in two-handed weapon specialization and deal 3% more damage all the time. For me, I like the utility, so I run things like improved hamstring, I run things like improved charge and anger management. Axe spec is going to be by far single-handedly the best warrior specialization. Mace spec is terrible, sword spec is very fun to play, but the consistency will be from polearm spec or from axe spec. Having that consistent 5% extra crit is just going to help you be a significantly better player because you're going to be critting more often as opposed to a random 5% chance to get an extra strike like Wind Fury. It is incredibly fun, but for that consistent gameplay, you're going to want axe spec. Mace spec is terrible in Classic because it DRs your stuns. I use intercept as a kill stun. I'll back up from the target, intercept in, stun him for 3 seconds. In that 3 seconds, I can get a slam off, I can get a mortal strike, execute. I'll use my intercept as a stun to kill the target. So having mace specialization will DR that stun, and it's just not very good in my opinion. Now, unfortunately, you don't have any choice when you run stuff like Unstoppable Force when Alterac Valley is out. In the Fury Tree, it's going to be the same for regardless of what your arm spec is. The only point you can really change out here is improved Battle Shout for improved Demo Shout, but apart from that, this is what the Fury Tree looks like. There is also a pretty cool duel spec where you take points all the way down into Last Stand. So instead of points here in the Fury Tree down to Enrage, you still take Cruelty, but you can take points all the way down into Last Stand. It's really good for dueling. Next, I'll talk about my macros. Now this may surprise you, but I hardly use any macros. The main macros I use are start attack macros. Now the reason why I have start attack macros is because for some reason in Classic, if you use your ability and you don't have the rage for it, it's not going to begin your auto attack. So if I can find a toad here, so I'm going to try to use Mortal Strike, but my character is not going to do anything. So I have this slash start attack slash cast Mortal Strike macro, and when I press this macro, it starts my auto attack. So then when I run up to the target, even if I don't have rage, I can still be pressing Mortal Strike and it's still going to start my auto attack. Now I have that for all of my abilities. Mortal Strike, Execute, Whirlwind, because Whirlwind sometimes won't start an attack if I target a different target, and then Whirlwind. I also have that for Hamstring. But apart from that, I have very few other macros. I have slash equip Skull of Impending Doom, slash use Skull of Impending Doom, and slash cancelaura flee, all bound in the same macro. So if I press this macro, it'll put on Skull, and then I just press it again to cancel flee if I want to cancel Skull early. Or I just switch to a one-hander and a shield. Which is this macro. I have slash equip slot 16, which is your main hand, your one-hander, and then slash equip slot 17, which is my shield. Now this is a really important thing to point out right now. My one-hander matches the weapon type of my two-hander. You do benefit from your one-handers being whatever weapon type it is. So let's say you're sword spec and you have ash candy or something, you better be running a one-handed sword because you can sword spec with the one-hander as well. Moving on, nothing too special here. Oh, on my fear, I have a slash stop attack macro because when I fear, any damage will break the fear warrior's intimidating shout on the primary target. If it is a secondary target or non-direct, it for some reason classic mechanics work differently. If it's a non-direct fear, they absorb more damage before warrior fear breaks. But if you charge, like let's say I charge this toad, and I fear, I did all of that and I didn't even hit him. So now he's going to set the fear full, whereas if I would have auto attacked him, it would have broke. In addition to that, I also used a macro right there, which was cancelaura bloodrage. So I have bloodrage will keep you in combat as long as the 10-second buff is up while it's generating 10 more rage. I have my cancelaura bloodrage macroed into my mount keybind, so I just press my mount whenever I want to cancelaura bloodrage. This way, if I do have bloodrage up, I just press it and it will mount me regardless. But apart from that, I have no other macros. Every single ability that I press on warrior is all completely manual, and I feel like that is super important. Switching to two-hander, switching to one-hander, all of my items, whether they're Goblin Rocket Helm, Skull of Impending Doom, Powerful Anti-Venom, I'll go through these items later, but all of this stuff is manually keybound so that I can build that muscle memory to that ability. The final thing I'll kind of go over here, which will be add-ons, in a sense, is down in the bottom left hand corner I have this thing called ItemRack. So for instance, Shift R is putting on my Rocket Helm, and Alt 6 is putting on my Rocket Boots. But if I want to swap back to my Rocket Boots, I can just use this little add-on here and click it. Same thing to these items of the right. This is a separate add-on called TrinketMenu, which I'll leave a link to the description. But apart from that, I also don't necessarily run any add-ons. Here are my add-ons. I run AtlasLoot. I also run Leatrix for some automation, which also helps me remove my griffins. In addition to that, I also run Leatrix Maps, which makes my map smaller. But those are all of my add-ons. And I'll leave a link to all these in the description below. One of the things that's super unique to vanilla PvP is all of the items and engineering usage. In this section of the video, I'm going to go over every single item that I know available that I use in PvP, whether it's engineering or non-engineering. But if you are a serious PvPer in Classic, you have to have engineering, at least 205 engineering to be able to use iron grenades. But apart from that, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage because they are free stuns, they are free damage absorb or reflectors or whatever the case is. It really adds to your utility in your toolkit, and so it is a necessity in Classic PvP. With that being said, I'm just going to start covering some items right away. Now, my character doesn't have all of the items, so I'm going to go into a browser a little bit later on and just try and cover every single item that I know available. I'm just going to cover all the items in my bag and then I'll move on from there. First thing I'm going to cover are grenades. Grenades are single-handedly the most important item in PvP. This is a free stun, it's a free intercept. They're able to be used while casting, they're able to be cancelled, and they're on a minute cooldown. They also do some insane damage too if you have thorium nades. They are the best possible things for PvP because you're able to stun off targets, you're able to use it as an interrupt, even though they're able to be Zerk Raged out of and they break on damage, it's still phenomenal. It also DRs with intercept. Moving on to Goblin Sapper Charges. Now these are AoE damage, huge damage that it does, and it also does damage to yourself as well. Next are Reflectors. I'm going to try to move as fast as possible. Reflectors are pretty straightforward. They do not reflect any AoE spells, so Cone of Cold will not be reflected, Frost Nova will not be reflective, and if you pop your reflector while the projectile is already midair, it will also not be reflected. It has to be a preemptive pop on your ice reflector or on your shadow reflector before they coil, not as coil is traveling to you. Next, I got Gnomish Battle Chicken. Creates a battle chicken and is good for interrupting some casters. I don't use it that often. Zandalarian Hero Medallion. This is just an on-use. I highly recommend that everybody, regardless of what class you are, pick Zandalarian Hero Badge. Increases your armor by 2,000 and your defense skill by 30 for 20 seconds. This is a phenomenal defensive trinket. I use this on my priest with Aegis, and I would use this on warrior as well. It's way better than the Hero Medallion. Moving on, I have Netomatic Projector. This roots the target. It's really good against flag carriers or mages, and especially good on Gnome because I can just escape artist out of it if it backfires. Next, I have Major Healing Potions. Now these are the highest level potions that you can get for level 60, and combined with the Whipper Root Tuber, that's the most amount of healing output you can do. Next, I have Nagarfrogger Elixirs. These turn you into a skeleton, or give you slow fall, or shrink you down and make you very tiny. That's a quest in Teneris, pretty straightforward. Moving on, I have Protection Potions for just about every school of magic. Now, one thing that I do that not very many people do in World PvP is I will pop a Greater Shadow Protection Potion, a Greater Frost Protection Potion against the enemy school of magic that I'm fighting. So for instance, if I fight a warrior and a frost mage and I just killed the warrior and now I have a frost mage to kill, I'm going to pop a GFPP because that can absorb up to 3250 frost damage as opposed to a Major Healing Potion that can only heal you up to 1750, or if you get lucky with a crit. But these are more consistent, and one thing that I actually use in World PvP, I bind these to my second action bar. Moving on, Elixir of Fortitude, nothing too special here. We got free action potions, very self-explanatory, 30-second immunity unless it gets purged. I have your Runecloth Bandage. I've got invisibility potions, good for killing flag carriers if you need to sneak by. Next are Flash Bombs. These are the best thing you could use against Druid flag carriers in bear form, in travel form, in cat form, or even Ghost Wolf, Shaman in Ghost Wolf form. What this will do is this will fear the target for 10 seconds, and that fear does not break to damage. So if they have a Trinket or a Tremor Totem or a friendly magic dispel, they will get out of it, but otherwise they are stuck in that 10-second fear even if they shapeshift out of it. It's also an instant cast, so the second you throw it down it'll explode, and the range is not very big. Also shares a cooldown with bombs and magic dust, which I'll get onto later. Next thing are one of my secrets that I've been holding on to for a long time. I'm sure everyone's familiar with powerful anti-venom. Target is cured of all poisons up to level 60. This is a free get rid of crippling poison on yourself with no DR to anything else. It doesn't share a cooldown with Runecloth. It doesn't share a cooldown with anything else. Now the thing is people don't realize this has a 30-yard range and can also be used on allies. So what that means is I can dispel blind off of any single one of my teammates. If my priest gets blind, if my pally gets blind with no sack up, if a hunter gets blind, if a mage gets blind, whatever it is, I can run up to them and use my powerful anti-venom, and it will cure them of blind. It will cure them of any poison. Viper Sting, Serpent Sting, blind, crypt poison, wound poison, whatever it is, it'll cure them of all of it. It's one of the most OP items in the entire game. I've got sharpening stones. Next, I'm moving on to rage pots. Rage pots are very helpful. I use just the great rage ones because I'm cheap, and these are really good if I need to get a slam off and I don't have enough rage or something. I bind these to Alt R. Magic resistance potions, nothing too special here. Gnomish death ray. This is very good. It did get nerfed though. It used to be really good in pair with recklessness because it would guarantee a crit from death ray, and it would also make you take more damage. Death ray scales, the damage death ray does scales off of how much damage you take during its channeling effect from the item, if that makes sense. Next, you got mithril ornate boots. These are basically like spider belt, except they replace your boots instead. It is a 5-second root immunity. It does not immune slows, so you can still get hamstrung and you can still get slowed from ice armor, but it will immune the frost nova. It will immune the entangling roots, whatever it is. So they're phenomenal at the start of a duel against a mage or at the start of a fight. Ultra safe teleporter. We also have gnomish rocket boots. As you can see, everything that I have that's not going to get destroyed has minor speed increase on it. Gnomish rocket boots is pretty straightforward. Goblin rocket boots are faster, but they blow up more often, and you lose the boots when they blow up. Next, I've got spider belt, also a 5-second immunity to roots, except it replaces your belt instead. One of the best items in the game for warriors for duels. My one-hander shield. Next, I've got Talisman of Arather. This absorbs 605 physical damage. It's a free shield, a very nice defensive trinket. Comes from AB friendly. Skull of Impending Doom. Everybody knows what this is at this point. It puts a dot on yourself that allows you to break sheeps, break helms, break blinds, whatever it is if you pop it preemptively. There's another trinket that I'll cover that has the same effect, which is another secret I'm holding. Goblin Rocket Helm, charge an enemy, incapacitating it for 30 seconds. They can heartbeat out of it, they can also Zerg Rage out of it. Very good, and warlocks can self-dispel them out of this. Next, I'll move on to some items on my bar over here. I've got limited invulnerability potions. I'll talk about this briefly. Makes you immune to all physical damage as well as fall damage. It's a free bop, a blessing of protection. It will remove the knockdown effect from a helm, from a Goblin Rocket Helm. So if you Goblin Rocket Helm and then lip, you won't get knocked down. Next, living action potions. These are free action potions, but you can pop them in a stun. So, for instance, if I get kidney shot and I want to get out of that kidney shot, I pop a living action potion, and then it'll remove the kidney shot and make me immune to all CC for the next 5 seconds. I can still get blinded, I can still get gouged, polymorphed, whatever it is, but not stunned or slowed. The final item I'll cover on this character is Magic Dust. Magic Dust is the most OP thing, especially for battlegrounds. It puts the target to sleep, any target to sleep for 30 seconds on a 20-yard range. It's very OP, shares a cooldown with Grenade, but also can be heartbeat resisted and take it out of whether it's Will of Forsaken, Tremor Totem. Back on the PTR here, I'm going to cover some more items. Arena Grandmaster Trinket. This is a phenomenal trinket, absorbs 700 to 1250 damage, and that's of all schools. Really good. Tidal Charm, I'm sure you've heard of this before, stuns the target for 3 seconds. Really good trinket, pretty hard to get. Nifty Stopwatch, increase your run speed. Lincoln's Boomerang, throw it at a range, has a chance to knock down the target, stun them, or disarm them. Diamond Flask, if you're not already familiar, Diamond Flask does scale off of plus healing. So if you have Diamond Flask equipped, put on plus healing gear like rank 14 plus healing maces, use Diamond Flask and then switch back to your two-hander. It will snapshot it and you'll get basically increased healing the entire duration, and it's very strong trinket. We'll cover a few more items here. Sheen of Zanza. This is a phenomenal potion to reflect any spell cast against a caster. When you pop this potion for the first time, it has a 100% chance to reflect the first spell cast on you. So if a shaman is casting an elemental mastery, chain lightning into an Urshock, and you pop Sheen of Zanza, it'll reflect both of those right back onto the shaman. Really good potion. Next, I've got Clutch of Foresight. This is basically a ranged counterspell, a ranged CS for any class. These drop from Strathholm, and it's an on-use item that you're able to CS, lock out somebody for 10 seconds. So it's really powerful for Warrior if you need to CS a polycast on you, or something like that. Really Sticky Glue basically is a item on use that shares a DR, shares a cooldown with Grenade. and instantly roots the target from an item. Last but not least, we got Arcane Bomb here. These are great because it also drains 50% of their mana in addition to the 5-second silence, so very strong. I didn't cover all the items like Vermog, Medicine Pouch, and some of the other things that I didn't think are necessarily useful for Warrior, but these are the majority of the engineering items and World PvP items that you see. Biggest thing to take away from this are the School of Magic absorbs potions over the healing potions. Moving on to the gameplay portion of this video, I just want to cover some Warrior basics, what to do at the start of a fight, kind of how to assess your opener. Warrior is very easy to play, but for those beginning players, I feel I need to show this anyways. Right off the bat, I'm just going to try and charge the target. Now, I'm either going to try and do one of two things. I'm either going to charge, and on my way to the target, since charge is not a global cooldown, I'm going to switch to Berserker Stance. That's one opener. Or opener number two is I'm going to charge, I'm going to auto attack, and I'm going to try and get Sweeping Strikes up as quickly as possible, and then potentially switch to Berserker Stance. And now I'll explain the reason why. But as you can see, charge my target, on my way to it, switch to Berserker Stance, and then I get a hamstring up right away. From there, I'll just apply Mortal Strike, do my damaging abilities to try and kill the target as fast as possible, make sure I have Battle Shout up, and then spend Rage on Execute when it's available. Now that opener is great against single targets, especially Rogue and Priests. When they come out of that charge stun, their first global is going to be Gouge or Fear every time, so you're going to be ready to react with Berserker Rage. Apart from that, the reason why you'd want to get up Sweeping Strikes as quickly as possible is Sweeping Strikes is your highest damaging ability in Classic. It is so incredibly underrated, people don't actually realize how strong it is. What Sweeping Strikes does is it'll duplicate the damage done on the primary target to a target next to you. Now I'm going to cover a whole section here about just Sweeping Strikes alone, but let me demonstrate it. First, if I'm going to want to get up Sweeping Strikes as quickly as possible, you're going to have to use Blood Rage. It's going to be a combination of charge, Blood Rage, auto attack, Sweeping Strikes, and then immediately switching to Berserker Stance. And this is what this looks like. Charge, Blood Rage, auto attacks, Sweeping Strikes, switch to Berserk Stance, and then from there, the first ability that I'm going to want to do, especially if it's not a healer, is Whirlwind. Whirlwind will hit each target 2 times, and if it crits, it just scales off of each other and it just does insane damage. But I can literally kill one target faster with Sweeping Strikes up than I can with just single target damage. Another reason why Sweeping Strikes is so good is that it cannot be dodged or parried when the damage is being duplicated. So let's say there's a rogue with evasion next to me and I'm on a priest healer and I do a huge 1500 mortal strike. It's going to go through that rogue's evasion and probably hit him for 1500 to 2k. It does insane damage and it's so incredibly good because it cannot be dodged or parried. Sweeping Strikes also paired with Retaliation is another good combination against strictly melee. A summary of what I've covered so far. Sweeping Strikes cannot be dodged, parried, or blocked. It cannot miss, but has a very low 5% chance to crit. Sweeping Strikes cannot proc on-hit items such as Crusader, Sword Specialization, Life Stealing, Hand of Justice, etc. Sweeping Strikes uses a formula to predict the damage on the secondary target so as to mimic the damage you would have done to it if you would have attacked the target directly instead of having it being hit by Sweeping Strikes. Sweeping Strikes is affected twice by plus percentage damage bonuses. This means procs like Enrage will do 50% increased Sweeping Strikes damage, whereas stuff like Defensive Stance will reduce its damage by 20%. Attacking the highest armor target will make Sweeping Strikes do the most possible damage when duplicating. Just how much more damage you will do depends on the armor difference, but generally the higher armor of target A and the lower armor of target B, the more damage you will do. Next, I'm going to cover how to use Slam. Now, why I make such a big deal about Slam is it's such an overlooked ability by most people, and similar to Sweeping Strikes, people don't understand its value. What Slam is it's the only casted warrior ability that just deals weapon damage plus X. It deals about half the bonus weapon damage that Mortal Strike deals, but what makes Slam so unique is it resets your auto attack. Now, what this means is I have a weapon swing timer right here, and as you can see, when I swing, it'll take another 3.5 seconds based off of my weapon speed before I auto attack again. Now, the significance behind Slam is that it will reset that auto attack. And what that basically means is, the best way I can put it, is Slam is a castable heroic strike. So heroic strike will consume your next auto attack, you queue it up, and it will consume your next auto attack to add bonus damage. Whereas Slam is a castable heroic strike in a sense. It's the best way I can describe it. And so why this is important is it will allow you to do the most amount of burst damage possible in a stun, because if you charge a target, auto attack, and then use slam, you just did an auto attack and then you just did a heroic strike 1.5 seconds after that. And what this looks like in a stun is you're able to charge a target, auto attack, slam, and then mortal strike, heroic strike, whatever it is out of that, depending on how much rage you have. Now what this basically looks like is I'm going to intercept this troll here, I'm going to auto attack and then immediately slam after. Auto attack, immediately slam after. That resets my auto attack, and then I'm able to mortal strike and do my abilities from there, and then I'll auto attack again. Now what makes slam good is you have to slam at the start of a cast. If you slam towards the end of when your auto attack is about to attack again, it negates the whole purpose. Think of it like this: slam is a 1.5 second cast, and I have a 3.5 second melee attack weapon. The first 2 seconds of that after I auto attack, so if I just auto attack and now the timer starts from 3.5 seconds down to 0, within that first 2 seconds I want to slam. Basically what I'm trying to say is you do not want to cast the 1.5 second slam if there's 1.5 seconds until you auto attack again. That would negate the whole purpose of slam. You want to cast slam at the start of your auto attack so that it's refreshing as soon as possible, if that makes sense. Moving on to the duel section of this guide, I'm going to go ahead and duel each class and try and give some commentary as a duel is playing on in the background. I'm going to put up tips and tricks on the screen at the end of each duel to help you beat each class. Starting off with Rogue here. Now this is going to be a long duel, but I'm going to try and give as much commentary and insight as I can. As we start the duel, I'm in defensive stance, and I'm just going to sit the full cheap shot kidney and try to absorb as much damage as I can. I'm sitting with one hand and a shield, and out of that he's going to try and kite me with crit poisoning. I'm going to try and piercing howl him, but right here I use my automatic projector. It backfires, gets both of us rooted. He sprints out of it and then runs away, and I just bandage. He's going to come in and try and re-stealth cheap shot me, so I sapper charge it. I didn't have rage for the demo shot there. Escape artist out of this route. He titles me, starts doing some more damage. Notice I still have a one hand and a shield on. I switch back to defensive stance, get a shield block up, and I demo shout him as well. So now he's got rend, demo shout up, and I'm in defensive stance. So he's doing the least amount of damage he possibly can to me. During these little kite sessions here, I'm just trying to basically get a rend off while he wastes his cooldowns while I'm in defensive stance. He's going for the full reset, so that's first blind out of the way. And if you notice, I had a one-hander shield out for the entirety of that part, all the way up until I got blinded. Opens up with a very nice gouge into a full 5-point kidney. Big damage out of this. I'm going to try and piercing howl here and potentially escape artist. Some sort of overpower here since I have my two-hander out. Just playing a little back and forth game. He gouges me, but I had a bleed on myself. Big overpower, D-stance back to one hand and a shield. Now I'm trying to look to slow him here and then use escape artist and stun him, but he got a full kidney off. I'm looking to potentially fear into a grenade. He vanished cheap shot. Fear nade here into escape artist. My nade missed, so I demo shout, and then he blinds me. Now this blind breaks early, but I still think I would have won the duel because I was in Zerk stance for when he would have sapped me, and I was also DR'd from the stuns. He pops a sapper charge, tries everything he possibly can to kill me, and since I was in defensive stance, I lived all of his cooldowns, and I won that duel. Moving on to Shadow Priest. Now there's nothing really special against fighting a Shadow Priest. The only thing I could recommend is when you pop your Shadow Reflector to do it on cast at the end of a Mind Blast cast, as opposed to preemptively popping it for a Shadow Word Pain or for a Bobby Flay or something. The only other tip I could really give is just use your pummel wisely. Like, don't pummel necessarily at the end of a cast. I like to pummel right as soon as the next cast starts, and generally out of an intercept they're going to cast something. So here you can see I popped the reflector on cast, did a huge amount of damage, and allowed me to win this duel. The hardest class for warrior to beat is mages by far. At the start of this duel, I pop Skull of Impending Doom, breaks that poly instantly. Out of this, I try to escape artist the Frost Nova, but escape artist resists, very unfortunate. I switch back to a two-hander, which cancels flee, and then from here, it's kind of just a kiting game against the mage. The trick to beating mages is really items. You know, having spider belt, having a frost reflector, having grenades, having a rocket helm. These are all items that are basically going to make you win the duel, because mages always have a way to get away, whether it's blink or just reset the duel with the polymorph. He blocks, I bandage instantly, which makes him come out of block, and then I helm him immediately. I'm going to switch out of my rocket helm as well as switch trinkets here, and then get a charge off. Now I'm already on the back foot of this duel. I've already used escape artist, I've already used a trinket, and this mage is just looking for a reset. Should have switched to D-stance here. It's always good to switch to D-stance before you get poly, so you don't just take free damage. Out of this, I'm going to get an intercept off. I tried to fear, but I was unsuccessful, so I'm just going to run up fear. He will the Forsakens instantly. I escape artist, walk up hamstring on him. I'm just trying to look for the kill here. D-stance here. Pop the reflector right at the end of the cast. And he blocks again. I have no bandage. And I want to get a hamstring as soon as he comes out of this block. He pops AGM, and I bandage in the Frost Nova. Out of that, I'm looking for a nade. He has no more mana, completely oomed himself, and I kill him with a whirlwind. Hunters are pretty easy for warriors. In this duel, I charge in, pop Skull of Impending Doom right away because he placed a trap down, and then I switch to one hand and a shield from there. The mistake I made in this duel is I didn't get sweeping strikes up right away, especially against hunters. It's a phenomenal thing to do, and you can kill hunters a lot quicker. Other than that, it's just kind of a kiting match between me and this hunter. He's waiting for his next scatter shot. He trinkets there, and then I put him into a root, and then I'm going to set a scatter trap. Now this is a very important part of the hunter duel. He's going to try and take his time, get as far range as possible, and potentially open up with aim shot, multi-shot. I'm going to look to charge his pet instead of looking to charge him. So I switched to battle stance there, charged his pet, because I wanted the full intercept stun here. Now unfortunately I tab targeted to a different target, but that was probably the kill on the hunter right there. Apart from that, he's going to try and scatter me again. It's still DR from the last trap. And then he puts down an explosive trap actually, and from here I just finish him on up, and then pop AGM. Druid fight is pretty straightforward. I start out with a one-hander and a shield and D-stance because I generally expect them to open up in cap form, pounce, and then entangling roots from there. Apart from that, it's easy, very easy as a gnome to just escape artist the roots every 1 minute. I got a nice slam there, which allowed me to get an overpower proc, and then escape artist these roots. The best tip I can give against fighting druids are flash bombs, especially against fighting flag carriers. They're just so phenomenal. 10-second fear that does not break on damage. If they trinket it, or whatever the case is, if you need to keep uptime against a flag carrier, the best thing to do if they're constantly shape-shifting is to just spam hamstring. I trinket that root right, that notomatic projector right there, which might have been a mistake, but I think I dodged bash, so I got a little lucky. In order to maintain uptime against some flag carriers, you are required to fap rocket boot and then just constantly spam hamstring. Warrior vs. warrior is pretty mundane. It comes down to who crits more. It's kind of an RNG battle. You could do little things like switch to a one-hander and a shield to avoid some damage, and also just kite out their auto attacks. You can see in this duel here, we both get up demo shot on each other. I put out a one-hander and a shield. Shield block his mortal strike because he had a full rage bar, and then I switched back to a two-hander and started doing some more damage. One thing that's going to hurt warriors a lot are any form of absorb, so any Arena Grandmaster trinket or the Arathi Basin trinket, any physical damage absorb will prevent them from generating rage. Shamans can be a challenge if you let them cast. I charge in right away, pop Frost Reflector right out of that charge, he Frost Shocks into it, and then he just starts casting on me. I pummel the first cast, start to kill some totems, but what I should have done is backed up, got an intercept off, because he pops his Elemental Mastery here and almost one-shots me. I try to fear into bandage, but there's deep wounds on it and I lost. To beat Shamans, you just don't let them cast and you kill their totems, but they'll still eventually kill you with Earth Shocks and Lightning Shield. Paladin duels are generally pretty long. I charge in, switch to one-hander and shield, go defensive stance right away. Sometimes they like to hodge first global, and I want to be in defensive stance for that. I was thinking about getting the sweeping strikes up here, but I got out shield block and switched to defensive stance, and I'm sitting the full hodge here, negating a lot of his damage. I fear out of that. I tried to bandage, but I realized that A, I had bandage still on cooldown, and B, he also had deep wounds, so I'm just going to switch to a two-hander and just try and kill him. Nothing too special here. Against fighting red pallies, you can use grenade through Blessing of Protection, so you can nade bop, and apart from that, potentially shield bash is really good against execute. I wanted to share this really insightful clip. Basically, we've got a shaman here with Elemental Mastery pop casting on me, and we've got a rogue who sapped me who's about to open up. I wanted to showcase a warrior's potential to 2v1 if played correctly. Rogue opens up with a cheap shot on me. I'm taking insane damage from this shaman. I'm going to trinket the kidney, get a shield walled out, intercept the shaman, switch back to battle stance, switch to a two-hander, get his sweeping strikes up, switch back to Zerker stance, pummel that cast. Now I'm going to nade and get a huge whirlwind cleave on them, kill the shaman there, and now it's time to finish the rogue. I demo shot that vanish, looking to fear and then connect to him and kill him. I'm going to try to provide a TLDR summary for the entirety of this guide so far. Basically, the things to take away are, from the gearing aspect of this, I gear my characters to have the most amount of HP as possible. I believe that the longer you can survive in a fight, the more likely you are to win that fight. On that same note, engineering and world items are very strong for warriors. Stuff like Spider Belt, Netomatic Projector, and especially Reflectors, I feel like are utilized the most on warrior as opposed to any class. I also believe that Aspect brings the most consistent warrior gameplay. I use hardly any add-ons and even fewer macros. I believe that everything should be done manually, and learning that muscle memory will make you a better warrior. Sweeping Strikes is one of the strongest warrior abilities you have. If there are 2 targets, it will double your damage. Slam is also an underrated ability. It'll take some getting used to for the feel of it, but it's very strong once you know how to use it. Beating each class really comes down to understanding the class and how to counter it. Especially on warrior, this will be most of the time an item advantage or a strat advantage, like sitting in a one-hand and a shield and distance the majority of the time against rogue. Don't be afraid to use your cooldowns. I find myself popping shield wall more often than recklessness because I'd rather survive the fight than try to one-shot everything. Also keep in mind that when you pop shield wall and you switch back to a two-hander, the duration of shield wall will remain. Some more tips. If you time it correctly, you can sit down for an ranged proc. Turning away from Gouge is very strong against rogues. Swapping to two-hander for overpower is very strong. Make sure you reflector on cast and not preemptively. You can taunt the pet to break a hunter trap. You could use powerful anti-venom to dispel teammates' blinds. Magic absorb potions for the school of magic you're fighting over health potions are way better. You have to be closer to your secondary target in order for sweeping strikes to hit. You want to attack the target with the highest armor when using sweeping strikes to do the most damage to the off target. Shield block is very effective against any physical DPS. It will reduce the damage of that attack by half. If you want to go for a crazy one-shot, you can Fear, pop a Mighty Rage potion, get 5 centers up in the Fear without breaking it, and then intercept Slam. Switching stances is not on global cooldown, which you can use to your benefit, but switching weapons is on global cooldown. I hope you guys enjoyed this extremely detailed guide. Please give a like on this video, it took me a long time to make. I know I couldn't cover every single item in this video as well as every single little strat. The best way you can learn from my videos is watching my live commentaries. I also have a live commentary duels versus each class as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what video you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.